You're listening to the Back Porch Talk podcast. Danny and Jason had many discussions and debates on the back porch while making pivotal investment moves with assets. That's right, with trading cards. They welcome you to the back porch and right into those discussions about current sports news with a fresh and unique twist. So come on and join us. Welcome to the Back Porch Talk podcast. I'm your coach, Jason.
Coach Danny.
Fans, we got a full show for you today. Super Bowl. Pat Mahomes and the Kansas City Chiefs, they did it again, man. This time in overtime, 25-22, Danny. What a game. I would say that the first half was, I think, a very defensive battle. One that was honestly won by the kickers. I think the kickers did a very good job in the first half, man. Whether it was punts, whether it was long field goals, whatever the case may be. And I think that's what kind of kept it interesting, along with a couple of fumbles here. One has to start talking about Patrick Mahomes as one of the better quarterbacks in NFL history. Yes, he lost Tom Brady in the Super Bowl against the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, so that conversation can be had there. But in terms of being 28 and winning 3 Super Bowls in impressive fashion, I would just say I think this run speaks volumes. I mean, you go, Miami comes to your house, you beat Miami, but then you ultimately go to Buffalo, and Buffalo wants some get back from years past in the playoff. Go to Buffalo, you go in their house and you beat them. And then you go to Baltimore, and where everybody knows Lamar Jackson is going to win the MVP, and you beat them. And then you go to the Super Bowl, and where you're an underdog. You didn't have a great first half. Something was said at halftime, frustrations on the sidelines, and where Kelsey almost knocks over Coach Andy Reid, pulling the reins at halftime, and he ultimately win in overtime. And let me just say this, Danny, when it got down to overtime, I didn't know the rules of overtime. Luckily, they put it on the broadcast and was able to figure out, okay, this is overtime. Come to find out, the 49er players didn't even know what fully the overtime rules were, which speaks volumes to coaching. Because it later came out that Kansas City, they did know the overtime rules, and apparently they've gone over these rules throughout the course of the season, but then ultimately even in the playoffs, etc. So just an interesting game, man. What say you, Danny, about the Super Bowl?
Jason, to that point about the overtime rules, that tells you their mindset of preparing for this all season. As bad as their season was coming into the playoffs, kind of limping into the playoffs, for them to be practicing and understanding that just shows you where they're at from a mental standpoint and how prepared they were. From the game perspective, there are a couple key plays where the punt that hit off in the third quarter hit off the 49ers' foot, where I think if that play doesn't happen, I think the 49ers actually have a pretty good chance at winning this game. But then Kansas City goes in, scores to make it 13-10. Then there was that blocked extra point, which was huge. You look at, too, with this team and Patrick Mahomes. So Kelsey's getting a little long in the tooth, getting a little old. You know, he's going to come back next year, but how are they going to replace the talent to support Patrick Mahomes is the question going forward, right? And we saw this year his receiving core wasn't the greatest. Rashee Rice actually stepped up. He's going to be a great player in the future. But they need some more talent and around him, and then someone as a tight end they got to start bringing in to once Travis Kelce hangs it up. You got to have that person there as an outlet for Mahomes because he keys in on those tight ends, and Kelsey just knows where to be.
Mm-hmm.
He made those big plays in that fourth quarter on that last drive to take it to OT. And also, man, from Miko Harmon to catch that ball in overtime after what he did in the Buffalo game, fumbling twice, he almost cost him the game. To come full circle to get the actual winning touchdown. Didn't even know he won the game at first because he said he blacked out. But for that to happen and for him to come from the Jets,
Come on, man.
not even making the playoffs to being a Super Bowl champion again, how cool is that for him and the rest of the Chiefs, man? So yeah, defense stepped up and made some big plays, put some pressure on Purdy because Purdy was rolling. And then thank you, Kansas City, for keeping Kyle Shanahan winless in the Super Bowl because I want to hex on him as long as we don't have a Super Bowl in Atlanta. He doesn't have a Super Bowl in San Francisco. Another double-digit lead blown. And it's just one of those things, man, you just got out-coached. And Kansas City made more plays, but great Super Bowl, I thought, in the second half, starting in the second half, that the altitude and everything that those kicks carry. And Bucker, they said, was hitting it from like 70 in warmups. So those came in big time. Bucker saved the Chiefs' butt because, you know, consistent as he was, he nailed because they weren't executing in the red zone. They only scored that one touchdown before overtime.
Let me ask you this, Danny.
Yeah.
Did Kansas City win it? Did they take it? Or did the 49ers actually lose the game?
Lost the game. And the reason I say it is because that second half, that punt was huge. That hit off the dude's foot. Because they had control. Because Kansas City, they had Mahomes. 49ers defense actually had Mahomes panicking. Yeah. Like his clock, like they said his internal clock was sped up where he was kind of rushing things.
Mm-hmm.
But I think the other thing too was Greenlaw, when he tore his Achilles on that freak play. Yeah, it's just Patrick Mahomes doing what he does. And his team caught the ball, they made plays, and they ended up winning it. 49ers had it, and I think they let this one go.
I think overall, Shanahan called it a decent game. There were some questionable calls, though, for me. One being that of taking the ball in overtime. Mm-hmm. Again, me not knowing the rules and thinking about it, yeah, if you take the ball first and you come across third down and you don't make it, you're left with a decision where you kick the field goal or you punt it. Yep. In this case, you kick the field goal. Had you not had taken the ball the first time, you had the extra down there, fourth down, and where you can just, you know, try to get the first down ultimately. And there's no decision to be made at that time. There's no stress. The only stress is you getting the first down. There's no stress in terms of decision making, whether or not to go for it on fourth down. So that's one thing. But I'll say this too, man. There was some questionable play calling there too, in my opinion, of that of Coach Andy Reid. Okay. In my opinion, in the first half, I don't think the Chiefs ran the ball enough. The weak point of the 49ers defense was along their left-hand side, basically the offense's right-hand side. So if you go behind the right guard, if you go behind the right tackle, you can go ahead and get some yardage. Now, there was one play that they ran it, and they were very successful. And I'm like, keep going back to it. The reason why I say that is because the Packers were very successful running along that side of the ball, that side of the line. The Lions was very successful in doing the same thing. And in the first half, I'm like, okay, you're struggling. Granted, there have been a couple of fumbles on both sides, but you still can run the ball, coach. Mm-hmm. You don't have to let Mahomes carry the load here. So I think it was a combination of that, but then also, listen, Danny, the 49ers defensive line in the first half was balling. And so maybe that kind of played into them not necessarily running the ball as much. If that's the
Mhm.
case, I would have ran screens after screen because the way that the 49ers defensive line was pressing that O line and getting to Patrick Mahomes, man, I would have just ran a screen play. And so to me, there was some questionable play calling on Kansas City end, but hey, who am I to say, man? Mahomes and the team, they go ahead and do it again, man. Same play that they ran last year, to my understanding, just different receivers. I guess, Dan, let me ask you this. Where do the 49ers go from here? Purdy seems to be their quarterback.
Yeah, I think he is playing well, so I think they're fine there, and he's on a minimum contract, so they have a lot of flexibility that way.
I would say,
I don't see why they wouldn't run it back with the
mm-hmm,
team. I think honestly, their secondary needs some improvement. So I think
mm-hmm,
in the secondary, and then now with Greenlaw being out for the year, obviously you need a replacement for him.
yeah,
But curious what Trent Williams does. I'm assuming he's coming back, but he's a big key piece of the offensive line. So I don't think they need to make a lot of adjustments. But like I said, on the Kyle Shanahan side of it, I think he needs some help from a coordinator perspective and take some of that load off of him. So then everything's not falling on him on the offensive side of the ball. And he has someone, that he can rely on to call the offense. But I don't think that'll happen. But that's what I see. I don't think they need to make many changes because the NFC, we have to see what happens with the offseason and the draft and everything, but they should be right there again. I don't see why not.
Danny, I gotta say this, man. Listen, just looking at these stats, Christian McCaffrey, just receiving wise, he had 8 catches for 80 yards, 1 touchdown. Debo Samuels only had 3 catches for 33 yards. George Kittle, only 2 receptions for 4 yards. He had 3 targets. That to me right there is, but he had a key first down. But to me, that right there is where I think there wasn't there needed to be a difference there.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe a change there. Maybe George Kittle's getting a little bit long in the tooth there, man. But I think 49ers are going to have to really make some changes. I think they're going to have to make some changes here. The reason why I say that, man, you got the Detroit Lions who should have won that game, by the way. They're going to get better.
Mm-hmm.
Green Bay Packers, who should have won that game, by the way, they're going to get better.
Yeah.
So I think that you got to look at how do the 49ers change? I don't think they're going to really, I don't think they're going to NFC
Yeah,
Championship. No.
usually that Super Bowl, whoever loses doesn't even make. Oh, look at the Eagles, right?
Right.
They got destroyed in the first round by Tampa Bay, um, and there are a lot of teams that are going to make some changes, like the Eagles,
Mm-hmm.
where they can have a bounce back year possibly.
Mm-hmm.
Cowboys, you never know with the Cowboys. So there's some teams out there in their division. Seattle, maybe Rams, you don't know. So there's a lot of things going on in the offseason that will kind of shape some things up.
Mm-hmm.
And then
Mm-hmm.
you can make a better determination. But if they run it back with the team, like on the offensive side of the ball, like Debo got hurt
Yeah.
and Purdy missed Debo on a couple throws in
Mm-hmm.
that second
Mm-hmm.
half that they took him out the game. Credit to Kansas City on that from that perspective. Ayuk didn't do much. It was
Mm-hmm.
Jawan Jennings had a heck of a game. And those type of players, like the role players, actually had the great game on the 49ers side of the ball, offensive side of the
Mm-hmm.
ball. So, like I said, they have to go back to the drawing board, but usually the runner up in the Super Bowl struggles that next season for whatever reason. So we'll see if they have a hangover or not.
And here's the thing with Kansas City, Danny. Kansas City, if there's any year to get Kansas City, this was that year.
Mm-hmm.
Kansas City should have got.
Yeah, they're
Or
vulnerable.
what is, I mean, they were terrible, man. But they find a way to do it. And I'll say this too. Any, every time that I watched Kansas City, especially in the Super Bowl, Mahomes had, you could tell he wants it. They all want it. And he has these gritty plays.
Mm-hmm.
Really, he's in terms of gritting it out, where he's running for a first down, gritting it out, and you can see it. And it's like, by any means necessary, I'm gonna get this first down. By any means necessary, I'm going to get this big chunk of yards. He grits it out, and I think it flows into the rest of the team. Like he wants it. So if there's any year to get Kansas City, this was the year. I think Kansas City is going to reload. I think they're going to get some receivers. I think to your point, they're going to get that backup tight end.
Mm-hmm.
On the offensive side of the ball, Snead and Jones, man, Jones saved Kansas City. I mean, he put the pressure on Purdy, especially in overtime, just to hear because Purdy actually had a wide open receiver there to basically win the game.
Yep.
Well, he scored 7. Let me rephrase. He scored a touchdown. I don't think that would have ended the game.
No,
But had it not been for that pressure by Jones,
who's a free agent?
and they won't have to re-sign him.
Yep.
There's going to be some money given up there, and I can see possibly even Mahomes restructuring his contract to get money for some other players here.
Yeah, it's kind of like what Tom Brady did, right? Where
Mm-hmm.
he was, in order to get to the Super Bowl, you need to make sure you got the right amount of talent around you.
Mm-hmm.
So, but the front office has to see what happens this year. They have to bring in another receiver
Yeah, they got. I think they got to bring in 2 more
because this
at
was,
least.
we
At
all
least.
witnessed what was going on. They almost didn't make the playoffs because of it.
Yeah, and I'll say this, man. Kudos to MVS, Valdez Scantling, who gets another ring,
Mm-hmm.
scores a touchdown in the Super Bowl, and he has 2 rings. He has more rings than Aaron Rodgers.
Yep.
Let's let that sink in for a moment. So MVS starts with Green Bay. He was the premier long pass catcher with Aaron Rodgers, and they go to the playoffs and they didn't do anything. Now that Scantling leaves, Kansas City picks him up, and this was in the whole period of where Aaron Rodgers was trying to figure out whether or not he was going to retire,
Mm-hmm.
whether or not he's going to come back, whatever the case may be. What happens? MVS gets 2 rings. You can't make this up, man.
Nope.
So my understanding is Aaron Rodgers did contact MVS and congratulate him. I think they were friends and everything, but man, 2 rings versus the 1. Man, MVS made out good.
Oh, yes, he did.
He made out good, and he's had a chance to play with 2 all-time great quarterbacks. So, man, kudos to him. But it was just an all-around a good Super Bowl, especially second half and overtime. Danny, I liked it in terms of he started off with Vegas. That's where they are. Vegas shows this the whole Vegas feel because they were in Vegas.
Yep.
So I think it was a great homage to Vegas. Alicia Keys, that first note was terrible, and she got messed up on it on social media, man. It all worked out with Alicia Keys, and also Usher duo. Of course, there was some back and forth there, but then also her.
Yep, her did really well.
She did an excellent job. The roller skating, the transition to really showcasing Atlanta, whether it was roller skating / the Luda coming in. Camera work was excellent. You saw the ladies on the pole tastefully. And let's just say that it ended up in the A.
Yep.
So it was a great homage to, from Vegas to the A to the Vegas and to the world. So I think it was, well done. I will say this. It's going to be interesting to see what's going to be done in New Orleans next year. There's a plethora of artists. I'm wondering what social media, well, the social media has indicated, they want different artists and things of that nature. So Danny, this was my understanding, the highest rated Super Bowl, highest rated television program in history. And some could say this could be due to Usher, halftime performance. Others can say that it's due to Taylor Swift. And let me tell you, man, it was so many cameos of Taylor Swift to a point where I was like, man, I just want to watch the game. Give me back on the field. Don't. And they were doing cameos to her initially after every Travis Kelce play. She didn't have a whole lot of plays in the first half.
Mm-hmm.
That second half, it was after Travis Kelce plays, but then it got to a point where almost after every Kansas City play, what they do? Go right to her. So I'm like, man, come on, man. Let's just watch the game. But the NFL know what they're doing. They're making that money.
Mm-hmm.
And they're bringing in new eyeballs to the TV screen. So it's going to be interesting to see what happens next year with NFL and how they do it here. But let's just say that there'll probably be a whole lot of Kansas City Chiefs games on TV because they probably expect Taylor Swift to be on there, and the more eyeballs there, the more viewership, the more dollars can be spent or made. So overall, good Super Bowl. I think it's going to go down in history. Vegas, first time it's been in Vegas. I think they put on a good show overall.
Thank you for joining us at Back Porch Talk Podcast. You can also join us on Twitter by tweeting us at @back_podcast. For more information, you can go to our website, which is backporchtalkpodcast.com. You can also email us at backporchtalkpodcast@gmail.com. Again, thank you for joining us, and remember that there's enough hate in the world, so go ahead and spread a little love.